No. Here we go. All right. Hello and welcome, everybody. Thanks for the your patience as we had a brief delay here. Some little technological difficulties, but we are here now with a Democrat and Republican walking to a bar, and I'm your Democratic host, Cindy Vanier.
And I'm your Republican host, Christy.
All right. So it is cold here in Southwest Florida, and I guess like most of the United States, it's super cold here. We had some flurries, even lake effect flurries, apparently in Cape Coral. So, how have you been staying warm, Chrissy?
Well, as you can see, I'm in the bed right now because I needed the covers. It's too cold. And so reporting here from my bed because it's
Nice.
freezing. And it's so windy. That's what kills you. It's
Yeah,
just, I
yeah,
went out for a run and I almost died, I swear. We're not built
yeah.
for this.
No, our houses aren't built for this either. Like, I grew up
Mm-mm.
outside Detroit and our houses are insulated and like the windows, it's like super solid, right? Like last night as the wind was like blowing through, it was literally
Yeah.
blowing through my house. Like
Yes. You can
the
feel it
wind,
leaking through any doors. Yeah.
yes, because we're designed to stay cool indoors,
Mhm.
not be warm. But anyway, I hope everybody is staying warm. And for those of the folks who are in other parts of the country who are hit by this horrible snow and ice storm, this is kind of like the second like double whammy here storm for folks across the United States. I hope you all are staying warm and staying safe. I know that there is I think it's pushing up towards 100 deaths related to the snowstorms and ice storms on the roads, and people dying from everything from like heart attacks while you're trying to shovel to like carbon monoxide when you're putting on, space heaters and stuff like that. So do hope everybody is staying safe in these winter months. Whew. All right.
Yeah.
So niceties aside, where should we begin, Christy? Because it's been another heck of a time here in the United States. Lots of crazy things happening. We had yet another ICE shooting and killing in Minneapolis. The raids and the protests continue there. And then we also had a huge Epstein file dump Friday night, which is, as those of you that follow this kind of nerdy stuff know, that anything that they want to stay in oblivion in like the media cycle, they try to dump on Friday nights. Unfortunately, with the salacious nature of the Epstein files, it's very likely that it will carry over into this week's news cycle. So, aside from those couple of things, and of course, the very exciting Florida legislative session, anything that is top of mind that you want to start with, Christy?
No. So I was just going to let you kind of lead the way this week because I have been working like crazy with my organization. We had some great strides and great successes. And so I've been kind of like, my head is buried in my work that I'm going to let you take the reins on this and I'll just
Oh
pipe in
boy.
whenever I have something to say.
And that's how I was this week as well. Had a lot of family stuff, frankly, family and business stuff. I actually started working with a new congressional candidate that's working out of North Carolina,
Oh,
so super excited for that. They have an early primary, so I have like a sprint to their March primary. So I was like, all right, let's rock and roll. It was my birthday on Tuesday, so
oh,
had
happy
that.
birthday.
Yes, thank you. Had a bit of fun supporting local business, supporting our local brewery and hamburger shop. And then it's my youngest birthday the day before mine. So it's like birthday, like birthday central. And my youngest just turned 9. So it's like I had a spa party. My living room was full of bubbles. These little girls like playing spa. But I was really trying to be like having like a normal family life where I wasn't like a 24/7 political wonk this week. Unfortunately, that's not the world that we live in, right? And I just couldn't keep myself away. So I honestly, after the birthday party last night, ended up texting a group of friends well into the evening about the Epstein files and the new drop on them. And so just to kind of back up on what's going on with all that. So we know that there was a legislative bill that had been passed that had required the Department of Justice, compelled the Department of Justice to release all of their all of the Epstein files that they have, that of course, in redacting for protection of minors and things like that. So and victims. So there was like a big drop like right around Christmas, right? That was that when the first big drop
Yeah.
was?
Yeah.
And then there was a deadline that was supposed to have been the release of all of the files, but the Department of Justice did not meet that deadline. And so this is, I guess, the second installment of this. It was about, was it 300 million files or something like that? And apparently is still not the totality of what the Department of Justice has. And there was so much insanity in these files. Like, if you've been even vaguely following the Jeffrey Epstein saga and stuff, this would like blow your mind in terms of what's going on. I mean, it has a lot of it included things that have less reliability, like some tips, right, that came in that either they couldn't corroborate because the person then died. There's a couple of those, or there was like they just could never find them again or something like that. There were actually sworn testimony in there, and I think that is where a lot of people were really like looking at like what was some of the content in that. But the long story short of this is, across political spectrums, very powerful people for a very long time became very close with Jeffrey Epstein and engaged in very disgusting, depraved behavior. And not just so, like, I think everybody kind of knew there was sex stuff, right? But what is also included in this new drop is there is accusations of snuff films, accusations of torture, accusations of murder, you know, accusations of cannibalism, like some of
It's
the wildest.
debauchery. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's debauchery to the point of Marquis de Sade. It's
Yeah.
horrible. Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, it was like there was a lot of stuff that was like the QAnon stuff, right? Where people were talking about that, but there's definitely themes that seem to really be connected in the actual evidence that there was in all of these Epstein files. And so yeah, it was really, and people are just kind of starting to pick through it. Who was where, when, who was doing what different stuff. And frankly, there's international connections as well, like which various government leaders were involved in this. I mean, everybody from Ehud Barak to Putin to, of course, Prince Andrew, other members of the British royalty.
Yeah, the Andrew Mountbatten. The issue with Andrew Mountbatten is that he swore he had cut off ties, and then it turns out that is not true. There's evidence that he had been emailing way after. So
and
that's
pictures,
just
new pictures. Right, then we have to use him his new name, his demoted.
Oh, right. Yes,
he is a Mount Blanc. So it's Mount Blanc, but it's not Prince Andrew anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then one of the funny pieces was apparently Elon Musk really wanted to go, but like he was such a pick me that Jeffrey Epstein was like, no, you can't. If there's anything to be humorous about all of this at all, but. I don't know. It was really, I don't know. I think that, and my friends and I are talking about it, going down different rabbit holes, looking at different people, analyzing it, because of course that's kind of where it is. It was dropped Friday night. So, people are picking over it all weekend, and it was just really, really wild. And my sense was to try to keep this like, okay, what does this all mean, right? Essentially kind of like not trying to dive into who did what necessarily, but what's the kind of purpose of all this. And I think that the scariest part about it is like the confusion, right? And the mistrust that this has brought out, right? Like people don't know what's true. They don't know who to believe. They don't know which sources to believe anymore. Are we believing the Department of Justice? Are we believing the president? Are we believing pundits? Are we believing mainstream media? Right? So by the way, some of the left is like caught up to some of the right on this. Okay. Right. In terms of like this massive mistrust on it. And then it's also, yeah, which, what do we do if we're like really legitimately looking at like, there's this huge horrific thing that's been going on and it touches so many parts of the government and the international like world, like what do we do? Right? Like there's like this sense of,
Right.
overwhelmingness. And then it's just, yeah, like how can we even move forward or prosecute, or what are we going to do with this information now that we have it? So I don't know if you wanted to weigh in on something like that.
Yeah. So what this is an indicator of, so distrust is an indicator that the only person you can trust is yourself, right? That we say we the people, we have this culture where people in power, government officials, even just staffers, even if you're not elected, staffers hold a lot of power. Lobbyists hold a lot of power. Media holds a lot of power, and this is across the board, not just in the U.S. This is across the board and throughout the globe.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we have this feeling of what can we do? What do we, the people, do? How do we move forward? And we have to find somebody to trust. And that's why there was such a push for transparency. And I was always in favor of release of documents. I totally understand the need for taking time to go through everything and redact the names of victims or any possible criminal justice proceedings in the future to prevent any, any bias for future juries or judges, and also just to prevent, any evidence tampering, etc. But with that said, I do want everything to be as transparent as possible, because the only thing we can do is stop trusting anything and just read it for yourself. Make your own determination. Because if that distrust is so inherent in this country right now, the only thing you can do is educate yourself by reading everything and making yourself aware.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other part of that too, and I've been thinking a lot about QAnon, right? And the connections and all of that stuff, and how powerful QAnon was as a force, right? In terms of getting people to believe things and even act, right? Like there was the Pizzagate shooter guy who kind of believed this, like the nascent part of the QAnon thing, and then went out and committed violence in response to this, right? Because people feel very strongly about like pedophilia and child rape and all this kind of stuff. Like it's people really have a visceral response to it. And I don't know, like what does this mean in terms of our ability to be manipulated for it? I kind of see the QAnon component as being a part of a political manipulation. Not necessarily political manipulation, let me say that. I actually, frankly, my personal thing is I'm still I think it's a Russian psyops. So that's still where my my thing is. But if to sow distrust among people. And that is actually a legitimate strategy that international organizations, particularly Russia, have used to make countries that they see as adversaries less stable. That's something that's true. Whether or not they were specifically involved in QAnon is a whole other thing. But that type
of speak to QAnon a bit.
I
don't know if so I've never been a member of QAnon, but I was invited to speak at an event called the Red Pill Roadshow, which had the other speakers were all mostly QAnon. So I got a taste of their opinion, and I got to see like the behind the scenes and really start asking questions. I'm like, but how much proof do you really have? You say all these things like it's coming this date, there's so much proof, and then it never seems to manifest. However, so I agree, this whole character Q, the fact that it was like a person and he's going to reveal himself, he or she is going to reveal themselves, I thought that was nonsense and ridiculous. What I can tell you though is the strength of that movement was average people that are just actually super passionate about it. Right. And they're not necessarily tinfoil hat people, because as we're seeing now with the P. Diddy scandal, with this Epstein scandal, as things continue to unfold, and look at like finding out what happened with those Nickelodeon kid actors, like that it's starting to constantly get exposed. They had a point. They just didn't have the facts and they didn't have the proof. So the reason why they looked kooky and loony is because they were lacking in evidence. And you could argue that's how the entire the entire, like, we the people have been duped, is that they have been hiding, the powers that be have been hiding evidence for so long, and it's only because now the movement is getting stronger and stronger and people are fed up with it that things are getting exposed, and there's no choice but to start to reveal some of it. And that's what's been happening, because this has been going on for decades. This is not a new thing. This is not something that's just recently started. This has been a recurring. I mean, people have had conspiracy theories that the influential, powerful people are like debauched beyond belief and into disgusting, drug wielding and dealing and, sex lives that are just excessive, pedophilia and torture, murder, harm to people. That has always been conspiracy. The fact, though, that QAnon had a point and it turns out that they were right, they just didn't have the evidence, I think is very telling. So as much as the Russian psyop thing, like, I get it, because like the person Q, I think, doesn't exist. I don't know how it started, but what I can say, what kept the movement going is people that said, enough, we want to know the truth, and we're just going to start making accusations until the truth comes out. That was their thinking.
Yeah. No, and so the reason I do believe that there is, at least, because what happens is not to say that these things don't take a life of their own. I mean, Q took a life of its own. Now there was an interesting thing in this Epstein file that basically put Ghislaine Maxwell as a moderator on 4chan. Epstein met with the creator of 4chan, and then basically the next day, the Reddit one too. I mean, she was a Reddit supermom, but basically it was kind of like looking towards the whole concept of, all of the QAnon stuff was put out potentially by Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Okay,
which is ironic.
I know, right? And the thing. So, in what, of course, makes these kind of conspiracies so believable is there are truths in them, and the truths are embellished and twisted and folded. So maybe parts of it that people, hold on to were not true, but there was enough of it that it makes people who are not even necessarily in it, right, question and distrust. And that is really why, as a international espionage strategy, this kind of thing is so powerful, because and it is the truth that Russia has put a lot of emphasis into their international intelligence. Their goal is to disrupt democracies. That's their goal. Because all they want to do is so people in Russia don't think that that's a good idea. Like, that's their goal. And the United States being kind of the most prominent one, and some of the other Western European countries, they just want to make it. They have online bots that cause conflict, and they share and spread these conspiracy theories of all different kinds, by the way, to just to kind of whip up people to cause this kind of conflict. So what other types of players were in there? I mean, listen, we have everything in there. FBI, CIA, Mossad were all named in terms of who inside some of these Epstein files that were just released. So I don't know if we'll ever fully have a clear picture of what's going on, but it is interesting to see some of these veins that were really important in the QAnon thing. And I do think that people that were in the QAnon movement, they were always pointing to the Epstein files, by the way. They were always said, release the files. That is how I think, Trump, who in his campaigning, it became a big deal for him, right? In terms of releasing the files became how he, brought those folks in, because it was important to them, and the transparency piece of it as well. But yeah, this was there was enough in there to make it go, okay, like there's a lot of overlap and a lot of different things going on.
And my question is, the thing is, it's files, right? So I don't know entirely. I've never been in the DOJ offices. I don't know how they function or what qualifies as going into the file, because I think that's part of the problem, is what is corroborated evidence, what is verified. And that's part of why it's kind of like, okay, we're getting pieces. Yes, and there are some lines that are connecting, and it's starting to seem like, okay, we're starting to see a bigger picture here. But even so, you got to wonder, like, what is to come from this? Is there going to be prosecution? How much of these pieces of evidence that we're seeing, how much is actually going to be like proven, corroborated, able to go to court, and be admitted into evidence? And that's really the question. So we see a bunch of emails, and we see a bunch of tips, and we see a bunch of sworn testimony. But again, all of that could possibly be manufactured, and I'm not sure what qualifies as what's going into the file and what's not. Or is this just, we put everything in this massive file and we're just going to dump it out all to you guys now, and we're not going to prosecute anything because we can't prove it, or something like that? That's what I'm curious to see how this is going to go.
Oh yeah. And I'll say there's a lot, I mean, the growing question that I'm seeing as people are going through these and talking about is like, yeah, where are the other prosecutions, right? So to date, Ghislaine Maxwell has been prosecuted. Supposed to be spending 20 years. She got sent to a low maintenance facility, right? Where there's questions about that. And, you know, Jeffrey Epstein killed himself or didn't. Depending on who you want to believe, right? And there's some evidence at the video and all this other kind of stuff, right? But he was being set up to, you know, be prosecuted for this. Now, there's also something that's interesting that is in this trove of files that is related to Florida, and why Florida, it was Alex Acosta, I believe, might have been the state attorney, or the attorney general at the time, why he did not, they did not prosecute Trump. There were some legal analysts that were looking at those files that had been released.
Prosecute Epstein, you mean? The sweetheart deal he gave Epstein.
Trump? No.
You said Trump. I was like, what?
Sorry, I'm trying to hold in and be fair about this conversation, but obviously that's where my mind is going. To prosecute Epstein. I think it was back in 2004, right? Because it was 2019 when Ghislaine and he got put in, and he died in 2019. But he was arrested in 2004 in Florida, and there was all these things, and there was, you know, several charges that were in there that were ultimately dropped, and he was released from prison, right, or released from detention. There were people saying, look, these are like solid, and the evidence that we have related to this looks solid. So like, what happened in Florida that allowed Epstein to go as well? So
Alex Acosta was the state attorney prosecuting at the time, and he gave Epstein a sweetheart deal that was just absolutely jaw-dropping at the time. He ended up becoming dean of the law school at FIU Law, where I met him in my first year. And then he went on to become Secretary of Labor under Trump, right? Secretary of Labor, was it?
Sounds
and it wasn't until after this after all the Epstein evidence started to come forward, and people were looking back and seeing that Alex Acosta gave him a sweetheart deal, he was put under the spotlight. Like, what were you thinking? How do you explain yourself? And then he stepped down from Trump's administration. So I'm actually going to Google it right now, though, to make sure I get all the facts before I comment more. But go ahead.
But yeah, so I mean, that's just
been a while since I've thought about it.
Yeah, it's like going in the Wayback Machine, because
yeah.
But yeah, so there was, I guess, from what you were saying about that, there might have been some ability, you know, some desire to get rid of this guy. But what happened? I mean, and that is also another point, right? Like, a lot of this stuff happened in Florida, guys, right? And what role do Florida politicians, Florida local officials, the judicial system based here in Florida play in this? You know, in the, it's not even a cover up, but what with all this stuff that's going on with the Epstein files and what had been happening here. You know, we know he had a home here, and you know, I don't know. It all, by the way, goes back to me to seem like it's corruption and corruption related, because it's very powerful people with a lot of money, and not just, you know, Trump is in there, mentioned a whole bunch. Mar-a-Lago is in there. Still, of course, that is, you know, what role that played is not necessarily clear. There are some really significant allegations against the president at this point, that he was physically violent and raping minors, according to the sworn testimony. There was something about a murder of an infant that was in there that was pretty horrifying. And but yeah, whether or not that, you know, the reality of that, whether that happened, whether that would be part of another set of proceedings, The role that the relationships with Mar-a-Lago played as well, that's yet to be seen. And again, there's still apparently like half of the files that are not been released, but some pretty damning pieces of evidence in relation to that. But beyond that, there's more people. Like, it's business people and other politicians. There's a bunch of shit with Bill Clinton. Republicans will be super happy to hear about that. But let me go on the record and say, Democrats, unanimously, we will give you Bill Clinton.
But then you got to give us Hillary too. You got to give us Hillary too, because she avoids subpoenas, and she's, yes, both of them, the two of them.
Take them. Take them all. I mean, but I will say, listen, I do believe it is a very safe bipartisan position right now to say, take all the people who have been involved in this. I don't really only heavily partisan people right now, I think, would be interested in protecting people if there's good evidence around it. But there's no push in the Democratic Party to save Bill Clinton from this. I'll be the first to let y'all know that.
Yeah. Well, the thing with Bill Clinton is it's like he already has a history of, sexual harassment, and, lying under oath. He was impeached due to perjury. What year was that? Was that 2000? Was that? No, not, it was before 2000. It was in
1998?
Yeah, 1998 or something like that. I was 3, okay? All right, so, but yeah, again, so it comes to the bottom line is, so now they're dumping all this information out. That's exactly what it is. It's a dump. And so, like I said, that's the problem. What is evidence and what isn't? Because evidence is technically something that can be corroborated and is verifiable and would be admitted into court. And so that's the going issue right now, is that a lot of these a lot of this information in the files that are coming out is not proven, is not verifiable, and there's all sorts of issues with it. Otherwise, it would be evidence in which there needs to be prosecution. So that's the ongoing issue.
I don't know. Or is it Alex Acosta all over again?
Or is it, that, you know what, if that's the case, then that is awful and condemnable. And then, yes, take them all. I agree. But that's the issue, is we don't know. And it's a big question mark. So I did just pull up what happened, just so anyone that's watching, in case they want to know the exact details of this Alex Acosta situation. In 2008, Jeffrey Epstein pleaded guilty for state charges in Florida, specifically solicitation of prostitution and procurement of minors for prostitution. All right, so he's already a known pedophile. In 2008, he pled guilty. This plea deal, which allowed him to avoid federal sex trafficking charges, was negotiated and approved by then U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta. His sentence was 18 months, but he served only 13 months in Palm Beach County Jail. He got a work release deal, which allowed him highly lenient work release program, permitting him to leave the jail for up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week to work at his office. There was a non-prosecution agreement after he pled guilty, which that's common. Once you plead, there's a non-prosecution agreement most of the time after. But then in 2019, a federal judge ruled that this deal, the sweetheart deal, violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act, because federal prosecutors did not confer with the victims before allowing the plea deal. So not only did this egregious plea deal come out for somebody that's pleading guilty to pedophilia, and pedophilia through prostitution, but on top of it, they didn't even notify and confer with the victims first. So that's atrocious. In which then, after this all came to light in 2019, after Epstein's arrest, Alex Acosta resigned his position as Secretary of Labor. So you've got to ask, and this is the question, it's like, one, what happened? What made Alex Acosta make this decision? I could look up his statement. I'm sure he has some reason, which he finds it justifiable. But you have to ask, it's like, what happened behind closed doors? What was going on that resulted in what appears to be something that's unconscionable? How can a prosecutor, how can the U.S. attorney let somebody plead guilty to soliciting minors for prostitution and only serve 13 months. And then here's the worst part. The fact that afterwards, after being convicted of pedophilia, any of these celebrities and businessmen having any relationship with him whatsoever. Why would anybody work with this man? How did he still have all of his money? How did not everyone just drop him and say, go away, you are a monster?
Yeah.
So it just shows that's where the mistrust in people happens, though.
Sure.
It's because it's kind of like, what is in your head that you would ever associate with somebody like that unless you are letting it be, looking the other way, or you're part of it.
Right. Well, and then, so speaking of that too, Harvey Weinstein was in the files in the release, and Jay-Z.
Yep.
Jay-Z and Pusha T apparently. But yeah, so, I don't know. Yeah. So listen, in the chat with my friends, and we're all women, by the way, in that chat, we're like, gross. It seems like this is just men. It's like, what do powerful men do when they get so powerful that they don't care about anything anymore? They feel like they're above reproach, right? This is what they do. Like, apparently they want to fuck really young girls and kill people for fun, and like, and we're just kind of like, is that what we're looking at? Like, is that it? Like, that's the end all be all? Like, this is, how do we, I don't know, like, frankly, we're all having a hard time processing and dealing with this. Is like, what do we do? And if it is like, this is what happens with men in power, what does that mean?
Well, that's why I brought up Marquis de Sade earlier. It's because, and like, I don't remember, like, obviously I've never read his work, like actual work, but I did learn about it in like a psych class one time. It was like one of my electives in college. I took like a psychology class and we were studying it, and his like stories with this graphic, disgusting sexual torture, BDSM stuff that's going on. The characters are all wealthy and powerful, and because they've attained so much power, they want more, and that's what you see. It's the power hunger, it's the ego trips, it's the egomania that I've reached multi-millionaire or billionaire status, Jay-Z being one of the most influential people in the music industry ever, in which then it's kind of like, okay, I have nothing to climb to. So it's almost like they seek out this illegal, illicit conduct just so they can feel more powerful. And then they're like, ooh, we have a secret now. Ooh, we're all in this. We have this power. And so if it's true that he was involved, that's kind of like the psychology behind it. And it's just repulsive and disgusting. And it really goes to show how, again, we as a culture and society allow these people to get into power in the first place. Why are politicians becoming so wealthy? Why are musicians becoming this wealthy? Why, there's just, I'm not trying to sound like a Democrat here. And so I'm not saying I'm a capitalist. I am a capitalist, and I believe that we have to let people make their money. However, I think culturally, that's why I'm like, I'm not spending my money to go see that Disney movie. Because I'm a capitalist, I'm like, why are we as a society condoning this? We have to stop condoning it. So I'm like, I'm not going to, Nickelodeon, I'm not going to pay anything into Nickelodeon again. When I have children in the future, they're not going to be watching Nickelodeon because that network allowed the abuse of children in the past. I'm not going to put any money into that anymore. Why as a society, we're like, well, for the sake of entertainment, we're just going to look the other way, and we're just going to keep watching and keep giving them money. It's kind of like, it really drives me nuts.
Yeah. I think that's true. And I will say, like, a big part of, I guess, in the woke arena, right? We do the same thing. It's like, use your money, right? Put your money into companies that you value, right? Now, of course, the problem is that we have fewer and fewer companies doing things. So you get to a point where, you can't really pick which, meat distributor going to buy from, because there's only a couple, right? Like, and I just read a really great book called Enshittification. I'm going to give it a shout out, by Cory Doctorow. And he's more talking about stuff that has been happening in the tech world. But this is kind of what happens. What he said is like, look, we've abandoned this idea of fair competition in terms of our companies. And in most major industries, there are 5 huge corporations or less, and they've been gobbling up all these small corporations. And so what ends up happening is you get you get elite capture, and then you get regulation capture, because we only have a small number of companies that can basically go to the government, state government, wherever, and be like, hey, we don't like these regulations, let's get rid of them. And if they don't actually compete with each other, and then you get your price fixing and all that stuff. That being said, is that's a whole era in our American history where we've backed away from what is truly capitalistic, which is competition and fair market, and we've allowed this consolidation of companies. And this is what's created this huge amount of wealth that can sometimes feel very untouchable, right? Because if there's no rule of law, there's no ability to prosecute, there's no ability to break up, and then all those people buy off politicians, right? And it could be in the meat processing industry, it could be in the music industry, it could be in any industry. Then we all lose in this system, right? So our few dollars, we don't even get to choose, right? We can't say, well, who's the good guys here, right? Because they're all increasingly bad guys. And that's a problem for us, and that we've kind of created in our system. And that is, to a certain extent, how I feel about what we're learning in these Epstein files, right? Is that, who are the good guys in this? I don't know. Like, there seems to be so many lapses in judgment, prosecution, up and down in Florida, in Washington, D.C., that it's really troublesome, to be honest, of like how we move on from here. And this is, I guess, feeding into the other part of, not only just the QAnon, but a lot of folks are feeling, I would say actually on the left and right, I've seen this, but that burn it down mentality, right? Like let's just rip it all apart and start again.
Scorched earth.
Yeah. I mean, people are mad, and it's like, well, all of this isn't working anymore, so let's just start over.
What is it? Where did this start? Scorched earth, wasn't it the Russians did it when the Mongolians were charging on them? So they just like burnt it all down. They're like, nope, like just burn it all down, scorched earth.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to do that.
The Nazis did that. Hitler did that as he retreated as well.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm going way to ancient history.
I don't know where the original term came from, but yeah. So
yeah.
So I guess I'm feeling the malaise with everybody. My desire to have a fully functioning system is waning, just because it's becoming increasingly like I don't see the path, right? Like I don't see how we fix it, a lot of things anymore. Right. Which is really sad.
It's part of the corruption is part of the infrastructure, it feels like.
Yeah.
Like the infrastructure of the systems that we have, the corruption is part of the walls. So you got to tear down the whole house, and you got to build up with clean, fresh walls. It's like a fungus or a mold. Sometimes you just got to wreck the whole house and start over.
Oh, let's end on that cheery note then. Tear the whole house down. But yeah, so anyway, because I know Christy says she's got to run, got things to do, and as do I on this chilly Sunday afternoon here. But do want to say thank you, everybody, for joining us here. We had quite a few folks in the live, and for those that are listening in the podcast, right? You're listening on the Big Mouth Media website, or potentially you're listening wherever you get our podcast, because we are available on all the major platforms, so Apple, Spotify, all that stuff. If you're listening there, please go ahead and subscribe and like and follow and leave us comments, because that will get us more reach, basically. And we would love to have you to be a subscriber, because that will help us keep going, right? Keep these lights on and keep bringing you this commentary. We are the only bipartisan talk show in Southwest Florida, probably indeed in the entire state of Florida. Haven't checked that far, but I think we could be, which I think is important as we're coming into some, very difficult, the government shutdown. We didn't even talk about that.
Well, it's only partial. It's only partial.
You guys so hung up on the Epstein files. But anyway, if you want to keep having this kind of conversation and commentary, we'd love to have you subscribe. You can get this episode and all of the episodes delivered directly to your inbox at bigmouthmediafl.com. $4.99 a month, $49.99 a year. And that helps keep independent media going. So I've been your host here, your Democratic host for a Democrat and Republican walk into a bar, Dr. Cindy Vanier.
And I'm your Republican host, Christy.
Christy. And we appreciate you, and we will see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.